So now we have chapters 30 and 31 in the processes section, which occurs after your brainstorming or generating ideas, and that is drafting. And then after drafting, beginning to assess your own writing. So we'll move on to the next segment, which is chapter 30. So chapter 30 is called drafting, writing a rough draft, essentially. Now, many writers write more than one rough draft. In terms of this course, the amount of time we have, really you'll only have time to write one rough draft and then one final copy. But you can certainly be thinking about your rough draft and what you can do to write it and then to revise it as you go along. So first, as the chapter says, be aware of deadlines and get comfortable physically. Schedule breaks, write where you can lessen your distractions. Write quickly in one sitting is their suggestion, perhaps thinking about just getting one paragraph or two done and then coming back to it. Expect surprises. As you write, you may come up with something completely different from your pre-writing ideas. So don't think of the pre-writing as set in stone. It's a way to get ideas down, but it certainly may not be what you eventually write about. Expect to write more than one draft, as I said, your rough draft, and then your final copy based on my comments, based on tutor's comments if you use the tutor, and based on your own rethinking of your draft. And then here are some suggestions on how to avoid writer's block. Start early. And by writing a rough draft, you already have started early. I kind of build that into the course, making sure that you don't really procrastinate. Pre-write again if you cannot think of how to start. Write a body paragraph and then go back to the introduction later. That's always something I suggest, especially for later papers, even for a literacy narrative, but for later papers, when we get into writing thesis-centered essays, the next two essays that we're writing, analysis and argument, are thesis-centered, then forgetting about the introduction for a while and going into a body paragraph might be helpful. And then finally, write by hand instead of computer or vice versa. So those are different ways that you can begin to avoid writer's block. So assessing your own writing. What we write for others must stand on its own. We usually are not present when it is read by an audience. And sometimes that's the case in an academic course, in a beginning academic course where you have groups of people reading each other's essays, but that's not the case this semester. So you're writing, other people are reading while you're not present for them to read it. So therefore, we must make our writing as clear as possible for both known and unknown audiences. Consider the particular rhetorical situation for your assignment, the purpose, the audience, the genre, the stance, and the media design. All of those are important as you begin to assess your own writing. Finally, here is a very beginning ideas on what to consider as you reread your text and revise. The next chapter after this one, which is chapter 32, actually gets far more into revision, but this is just a little bit more about assessing and revising to start thinking about it. So your focus, think about your focus. Do you have a clear point? And for your literacy narrative, what is that point? Is the point maintained throughout the piece? Think about support. What reasons, examples, and evidence do you provide? What strategies are important to use, and have you used them well? Remember, we talked about strategies in one of the last chapters. Think about organization. Do you use transitions well to move from one idea to the next? And finally, think about clarity. Does your title introduce the paper well? Do your introduction and conclusion work to clarify points? Have you made relationships between ideas? So All of these are important to consider as you reread and revise. And let me end with this quote by William Strunk Jr., who wrote one of the most important early books on clear and concise writing. And I really like this quote: rewrite and revise. Do not be afraid to seize what you have and cut it to ribbons. Good writing means good revising. So that's it for chapters 30 and 31. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.